So to begin, um, here's a little bit background on the tree before we step in. Now, this particular image we will be getting into a little in more detail because it's really extraordinary, as you can see, and depicts the tree. It is from the 16th century, and so we'll get into that. But I wanted to give a little background on the tree and on alchemy. And as you know, alchemy stems way back. It exists in China, in India. It is a process of transformation. Um, it's a chrysalis process, not a growth process. It's a process of transformation, turning what the alchemists called lead into gold. And what we know is that Jung, of course, saw this as a projection of psyche. And I can't disagree with him, even though some of the modern alchemists may, simply because we see everything through the lens of psyche. And so all objective reality is always seen through our own subjective lens. And there's always that synchronous dance between the two, which is the dance of the caduceus. So the tree of life contains within it the whole, the blueprint of the destiny of humankind, that which we can potentially attain to as gods. For once we've tasted of the fruit of the tree, we have been given a key. We have knowledge, gnosis. It is of interest that on the tree in the fall from what we're going to look at the supernal triangle, which is the archetypal world, we plummet through the invisible sphere on the tree known as Doth, or knowledge. And implicit in the word itself is the concept of death, of abyss, of transformation, and within that, the knowledge. There is an ending to the paradise from which we have fallen. We have plummeted from the land of the invisible into the duality of time and space, through the abyss, and we find ourselves in a land rich with color, of milk and honey, but one that also brings knowledge of the opposites. We are travelers through a world in which we are buffeted by winds of change at every turn, and by extremes. Because in this plane of duality of existence in which we live, we receive both light and dark, evil and good, sickness and health, suffering and ecstasy. And with this, we discover that we ourselves are the stewards on this plane and have been given the task of balancing these tensions of opposites and making them something new, which heals and makes whole that which has been broken and split. And it is within this knowing through the experience of life that we encounter choice and responsibility. And from this point, we then have the opportunity to become stewards of ourselves and the garden in which we live. So in invoking the Hermetic Tree, also known as the Kabbalistic tree, its roots go back to the Hebrew Kabbalah. We're looking at the Hermetic Kabbalah, which basically appears from the Middle Ages for the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century onward. And we're looking at it from the Hermetic view. So it is indeed a spiral journey of universal energies of above and below, back and forth. And so I'm going to open, if I can. So within the tree of life, there are many, many trees. So there's a multivalent, multiplicity, multidimensional view of what this is. So we're going to journey through from the above to the below, from the below back to the above, and from side to side, and from within to without. So here we go. So here's the image of the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And I'm going to spend a few minutes here. At the top of this, we can see here where my cursor is. This is Keter, otherwise known as the one light. This is the light from which we emerge, from which we come, and it is unmanifest. It is the one. And from the one, we split into the two, the reflection, which we'll be moving towards. This is the zodiacal sphere of Chokmah, or wisdom. And across from that, whoops, I'm going to go back for a minute, is the black sphere, where we begin our journey, because that black sphere is Saturn and is the beginning of the alchemical process according to the alchemists. Because they didn't have the outer planets, I've basically designated these three spheres to the outer planets. Now this would be Neptune, Uranus, and then here is that abyss place of knowledge or gnosis. And from this top triangle, which is called the supernal triangle, we move down through the abyss, which is called knowledge, and come into the field of duality and burst into color. And from this color, we now see we have the blue sphere of Jupiter, and across from it the red sphere, which is Mars, and come to the gold here, which is the sun. We continue down because all of these spheres correspond. This is a system of correspondences. So they correspond to the elements, but also to the planets. And so here we have Venus, and across from that is Mercury, the moon, and at last we come to Earth. And if you fold the tree up, it becomes a cube. And there, within that cube, is the essence of the prima materia, because we begin with the stone and end with the stone. So last thing I wanted to say, you'll please note that this particular triangle, which is called the philosophical triangle, is a direct reflection of the triangle which is in the spirit realm. And from here we move down to what is called the astral triangle, or the subtle body. And this is the realm of dreams, of imagination, and of thinking, visions. Now this particular triangle, as you'll also notice, that we are coming from no color into this invisible sphere, and here we have the primary colors. And as we get closer and closer towards Earth, down here, which is the quaternity, the 4, we begin to, the colors become more and more dense. Also wanted to point out that this is a system of correspondences. So what happens on one side is reflected in its other side. And this is where Jung's work fits so beautifully on the tree, because we have these tension of opposites. This is the pillar of severity, and this is the pillar of mercy. The pillar of severity is the feminine, if you like, the yin, and the pillar of mercy is the masculine, or the yang. But they are always dancing together, and that is the caduceus. So more on that, just to enter, because there's lots to go through. This is the Unio Mystica triptych by Jofra Boschart, who certainly was very well versed in all of this, as well as the Greek mythology and the astrology. And this is a depiction of the tree itself. And you can see what is called the quintessence, which is the essence right here in this 5-point star, which is really a 6-pointed star, where the triangle of fire meets the triangle of water, and the seal of Solomon. And you can see the feminine on earth, and this journey upward to the crown. Now the top is called the crown. And as we have been through, many of us this year, through this journey through the crown opening, we find ourselves in a new world, we don't know what that world is yet. Just very briefly, to go to this side, we have Bina, the Great Mother, sitting on the left side of the tree as the pillar of mercy. She is the creator and destroyer of form. So although she is relegated to Saturn, which is that blackness, which is dross, she is also the Great Mother. And you can see here, there's always this dance of back and forth between the masculine and feminine. We have Mercury over here and Pegasus, people bathing. And then over on this side, we have the Great Father. And that is Hokmah. And here we have Venus. And so there's always this interchange. And we have all these souls dying, going into death, being reborn, and we see the cycle of life. Here is a much more specific image of the tree with the correct correspondences. And what I'm going to point out, because we're talking about this specifically, is at the top of the tree, we have what is called the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sofor. In infinite light, limitless light, and the void. And from this is where the first light, if you like, the Big Bang, the first concentration of light begins. And then you can see we move back and forth. And here we are. So there are two paths. The downward path, which is the emanation, is called the lightning path. And it has to do with fire. And it's also called the path of the flaming sword. And it's very quick, and it has an electrical energy. It's connected to the force, which is Hokmah, because this is also a dance of force and form, masculine and feminine. And on the right side, we have what is called the serpent path, which, yes, indeed, it is Kundalini, it is DNA, and it is the path that we take when we work with the tarot, which I work with, and that particular system, and this is also the one that Stefan Heller uses, comes through the original Golden Dawn, and this particular pathway back and forth corresponds. There are 22 of the major arcana cards. We won't be going into that today. So onward, and here is another image. You can see the DNA and Robert Flood on the other side of the many images. I particularly like this one because you can see the serpent path transposed on top of the tree itself. And within that, the caduceus meeting at the top. And you can see Dion Fortune, who is one of the Golden Dawn occultists, uses something which in my classes I've been using a lot, which is backing into the tree, where we actually embody it. And when you embody it, then you get this everything reverses. And you're able to then really experience it as the Kundalini. And you can see much of what we talked about here. And again, Jofre Boss chart, obviously one of my favorite images. Again, you can see the tree, but in the center is Mercurius himself. And Mercurius, of course, is the mediator between spirit and matter, as above, so below. And Hermes Trismegistus, on whose work this is, we will be moving into that as we talk about the Emerald Tablet. Hermes Trismegistus, we don't know whether Thoth and Hermes was his Greek name, and Mercurius, the Roman name, and Thoth, the Egyptian, are all really the same god, but we don't know if this person ever lived or not. It seems like I'm not going to go into the historical background because it's a little confusing, but I believe it's only about, they discovered about 1000 AD that some of the corpus hermeticum comes from. But again, on this image, you can see that on the left-hand side, we have what we'll be delving into, the circle, the triangle, which mediates, and the cube. So keep that in your mind. Again, we can see how the Great Mother is connected to form and the breakdown of form. And she has the moon overhead. On the right side, we have the Great Father and nature. So everything, again, moves and dances together. Here we have the feminine, the anima mundi, pointing downward, and above her is this, the moon. And here we have Mercurius, and above him pointing outward is the divine emerging, then what Jung referred to as this new energy, perhaps this new Aquarian energy of the humanity crowned, and around him the caduceus. So moving forward, Jacob's ladder. The tree, it has been called Jacob's ladder. There are actually 4 trees, and they are connected to 4 different realms. Mostly we're working on the bottom 2 as we can't access the higher ones. It's a lot of information, but you can see that it's a spiral. Jacob's ladder is a spiral going from heaven to earth, and Jung's serpent moving the other way from the Red Book. Another painting from Blake. This is Eve in the garden, and the serpent being tempted by the serpent, which potentially is the only path of evolution that was possible. And this is again an image of the tree from Jung's Red Book. And we can see the same theme here with the serpent below and these encrusted kind of reptilian, really instinctual kind of energies in these animals, and then the tree growing out of that, and spirit with the fire that connects. So we'll be moving.
Eva, we lost the audio.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's back now. There's a little bar at the top, and it's really easy to, when I move it around, to click on it. So, as above, so below. As below, so above. So here's the alchemist. The bridging of the sun and the moon being the feminine, reflecting back the sun, which is the solar center. Again, from Jung, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Again, this reflection of the as above, so below. Just a different view of the tree. Now, here we are again. Here we see the correspondences that we were speaking of, where the planets are placed. Now, we're going to begin, we spoke about Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, but the ancients began with Saturn. So from Saturn, the Great Mother, it diagonally on the lightning path, which we're following at the moment, we come to Jupiter, where we're going to see from what is called calcination, or the calcinatio of fire, the breakdown of the old black matter, which is the beginning of the prima materia, the stone, which begins as this heavy black dross, and we move to the philosopher's stone, which is bringing, from Jung's perspective, the unconscious, the shadow, into consciousness, and that is the process of individuation. And so I'm attempting to bridge these. Now, Jupiter over here, which is connected to tin, we're going to move into that more deeply, is the water element and dissolution. And coming across to Mars, we have the separatio, the separation, moving from the separation of the soul and spirit from body, which is the beginning of what they call the first conjunction, or the unio mentalis. Later, we're going to try to bridge the three, which is bridging spirit, soul, and body. So here's the first conjunctio, the sun. But that's not the end. Then we move into this process where it then has to go through another breakdown and fermentation process to refine itself, and across to this, which then is Mercury, which is the distillation process, refining it from wine into brandy, and then further here into the moon, which then reflects the sun. Now, if we look up the middle pillar, this is the middle pillar, we can see that the earth is a reflection of spirit, and the sun is the mediator. Now, it is said that this is what they call the Buddha or Christ consciousness. You cannot, within a physical form, move beyond this. So you can only experience this in the imaginal realm, which they call path working, which is a form of active imagination. You can only come this far. Beyond this, you're in another realm. And we do move through this realm, of course, at the time of death and birth, and psychologically when we go through initiations of transformation. So, and here we have the Emerald Tablet, and this Hermes Trismegistus is the apparent author. And what is important here, we're not going to read the whole thing, but everything, and of course Manly P. Hall's work is based in this as well. So that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And just as all things have come from this one thing, through the mediation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing through transformation. And its father is the sun, its mother is the moon. The wind carries it in its belly. Its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected if it is turned into earth. That is the return, the philosopher's stone. Here is the actual process that we're looking at. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of both the above and the below. Thus you will obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. In this way was the universe created. From this come many wondrous applications because this is the pattern. Therefore am I called thrice great Hermes, having all three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe, Herein have I completely explained the operation of the sun. And this is the return to the Philosopher's Stone from the dross of the prima materia. Now, these three parts have to do, are actually alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. And theurgy is the magic. And this is the three parts of this process. So here is the Malachias Geiger, 1652. Microcosmosis, hypochondriasis is what it's called. And we're going to move into this a little bit more. Now, at the top, we can see that the symbol in the center is that of Mercury. And around it are the lower heavens and the higher heavens. The entire, at the very top of it is the symbol for God, which is the Yod He, Vav He, which are the four levels of Jacob's ladder of the tree itself. But below this, we have these angels, and we can see the entire zodiac and all the figures beneath that and the starry heavens. This is directly from Adam McLean's Alchemical Tree notes on this. And we can see that there are three ways of seeing the year. There's the Annus Solaris, he calls it, which you can see up here on top, on the outer, this outer triangle. Then we have the year shown by the movement of the stars, which is the closer in, next in, and a year seen through the seasons of the year, and the cycling of the four winds. The next circle, we have the three Mercuries, what they call the common Mercury, which is the element of Mercury, Quicksilver, the corporal Mercury, the body, and the philosophical Mercury. And again, moving closer, we have the next, these substances, which is Mercury, which is the mediator, sulfur, which is fire, and salt, which is the realm of earth. And so he has here all three of them in these circles. So we have the three sulfurs, the combustible or common sulfur, the fixed and the ethereal, and then the salts, the common salt of earth that we use for food, the central salt, and the salt of the elements. So there are different levels. So we can see that this pattern of the above, so below, is everywhere. You know, it is the macrocosm and microcosm. So moving downward, we can see here, of course, is the tree of life itself. And this is coming down lower. We have in the center of this arbor vitae, which is the tree. And within the tree, by the way, these are all, for those of you who are familiar, are all the planets and the elements themselves. And set in the center, this crowned woman is holding in her left hand the book of wisdom, which is Sophia. The Greek name Sophia is wisdom. And in her right hand is a scepter, around which is a banner with the axiom from the Hermetic tablets. That is, again, that which is above is that which is below. Above her in the canopy of tree, we have the seven metals and the reflections of the planets above that. Now the tree stands on a hill, as you can see, and it has its roots penetrating deeply into the earth. And to the right and the left are two mountains. And to the left is the phoenix. And on the other side, we have a salamander. The salamander is connected to fire. So it's very much associated with this calcination process. And then on the other side is the symbol for air, which is a phoenix. And phoenix, of course, rises from its ashes. So again, this is a bird connected to a transformation of dying in the fire and rising from its own ashes. The phoenix has one of its talons in each sphere and is receiving beams from, according to Adam McLean, from the sphere of Jupiter. Now on the right, there's an eagle, and also holding two spheres, and the eagle represents the sphere of water, the eagle being connected to Scorpio. And at the base of the mountain, we have a crow, a swan, and a peacock. And the text apparently below says, I am the black, which is the blackening, the white, which is the whitening, or the ash, the albedo. The black is the negredo, and the yellow, which is the citrinatus, which is a fermentation process after we've reached the first conjunctio, the breakdown and distillation, and the red. Now, this is the actual alchemical process, and what we see is under that is the ray of Mars, and in the background there are two humans killing a small winged dragon. Now, the dragon represents the instincts, that which we are trying to tame or kill, in a sense, in order to arrive at the essence. Now, one of these dragons is female, and she has a bow at her, one of the women, I should say, has a bow, and maybe a reference to Diana, the huntress, and the other, and the goddess of the moon, and the other is a male with a lyre and may be connected to Apollo, her brother, who is the god of the sun. Now, underneath is this mountain with the cave, and in that sits Mercury with his caduceus, if you can see that. Here he is on the right, sitting with his caduceus, and Sol and Luna, leading two lions, approach the cave and are greeted by him. The lower one says, may you have a long life, health, glory, and an infinity of gifts. In the center of this inscription is a circular space with the inscription of sulfur, mercury, and salt. And there's a circle, a square, and a triangle again. And this, if you can see this moving up. And again, the reference to salt, sulfur, and mercury is the reference to the Philosopher's Stone. Finally, on the very top is a pelican seated on his nest and feeding his young from the blood of his own breast. And the pelican is an alchemical symbol because he has an alembic that he can carry his young in. But this image is referring to the Albedo, which is the new life, the new blood, the return. And it's the final phase of this the second conjunctio, the conjunction, where when we go to heaven, when we come, we bring down the divine, we have to return and bring heaven to earth, spirit to matter. And so that's the beginning. And here is an image of the alembic with the pelican feeding her young from her breast. And this is where we're going. It is actually a symbol of the Philosopher's Stone. This as well, we have the alchemist at the top. We have the water, the dew, and the fire. And the below reversed, we have moon and sun. Here we have the symbol for sulfur, fire, the symbol for Mercury, Mercurius, and the symbol for salt, the cube. And these three are constantly working. We're working with them in order to create these transformations in the alchemy. So let's see. And this again, the stone is everywhere. We begin with the stone, the prima materia, and we end with the stone, the philosopher's stone. And Jung saw this as the process of individuation, of coming to wholeness, of awakening from our sleeping ego selves and going through the transformation where we can become the whole individuated beings, which is really becoming who we truly are on a soul level, with bringing the spiritual through the personal. And it's no easy task. It's a lifetime process if, and many of us have experienced it on a planetary level. We have all been in this process this year. This is the same by Jacob Boehme, and we can see here this bringing the circle into matter, the spirit into matter. Again, it's a really beautiful image and quite complete with the planetary symbols, and then squaring the circle, bringing spirit into matter. And here we have the entranceway and, of course, the cube. You can see it all here. You can see the moon reflected by the sun. The alchemist using his compass to square the circle, using the triangle working to bring, how do we bring the infinite into the finite? The great question. And here we have some interesting images. I'm going to, on the top, the alchemy is divided into 7 parts, but there are 3 times 7 because there are 3 alchemical phases. There are 3 conjunctios. The final one, of course, is not one that is easily reached. Apparently, Paracelsus, the great alchemist, was able to reach that, but it's rare. We have, in correspondence, there are 21 paths in the tarot, in the major arcana. There are these 3 alchemical elements, the sulfur, the mercury, the salt, and then we have the elements of earth, which is fire, air, water, and earth, which Jung, of course, for him, this was intuition, thinking, feeling, and sensation, or the correspondence there. They create the stone. But the quintessence is actually the beginning and the end of the great work. And the quintessence is Mercurius himself, and is the star. So on the right side, we have all the phases. We'll be going through them briefly. And the triangle, in which you can see the tension of opposites on the two sides, and the transcendent third, where that which is the polarities that are so difficult to be able to hold, as we can see in our world right now. If we can hold that tension, then eventually the third, or the grace, may come through. Now within this you can see, and Jung spoke of the quaternity, that within the triangle there are actually 4 parts. So it's the 3 plus 1. This connects back to Maria Prophetessa, but we're not going to go there today. Again, spirit, soul, matter. And it was said that in the alchemical process, it was necessary to capture Mercurius, the philosophical Mercurius. He is quicksilver, and yet he is necessary for the operation to bring the fire into matter. And here are these angels helping the alchemists who are praying and in an effort to capture Mercurius, who's in a sealed alchemical container, to be able to work the operation. So Jung, from Jung, this is from, I believe, Psychology and Religion. There can hardly be any doubt that not a few of those seekers had the dawning knowledge that the secret nature of the stone was man's own self. This self was evidently never thought of as an entity identical with the ego, and for this reason it was described as a hidden nature, dwelling in inanimate matter, as a spirit, daimon, or fiery spark. And that fiery spark is Mercurius, and also sometimes referred to as the Sophia. Here's an alchemical image of Mercurius with this candelabra with the 7 planets, with reminding us that the work is secret. Here is the Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its own tail, which is the symbol of Mercurius as the original prima materia, and his wings move. And here is another image, and this is a 17th century one, and you can see the 2 sides, the fiery serpent, the fiery serpent, and the earthly one. The transformation is a circular one. Everything is circulation. Everything is circulatio. As above, so below, and then again, it circles around. Jung's enantiodromia, moving from one side to another, also speaks to this. Always in this plane of duality in which we live, there are always the opposites. So again, from Jung, from the earliest times, Hermes, who of course is Mercurius, his Greek name, was the mystagogue and psychopomp of the alchemists, their friend and counselor who leads them to the goal of their work. He is like a teacher mediating between the stone and the disciple, the mediator. Here's another image by Bartholomeus Springer, and you can see here Mercurius as serpent. And the is above so below, this is a very masculine image, but he also has 3 faces. He's looking to the past, to the future. So he's also a guardian of the thresholds and of the crossroads. Now, this is the diagram of the processes, Negredo, Albedo, and Citrinatus, and the Rubedo that we've been speaking of. And we can see the sun and the moon. And we'll be moving more deeply into this. Later, the Citrinatus was dropped. The Citrinatus actually comes after the conjunctio, but it is a fermentation process. And we arrive in the rubedo, which I think of more as a square, but here it is a circle. And this is Jung, image, of course, from the Red Book, squaring the circle. And you can see that this Chinese figure, which I imagine that was the secret of the golden flower, which apparently his friend Richard Wilhelm brought to him, was the beginning of his research into alchemy, because his own experience in going through his active imaginations in the Red Book brought him to this place where he realized that the alchemists, unbeknownst to them, were projecting spirit into matter, and that the psychological language, which they did not have, they were actually being transformed in the process of their experiments. But here we have the, of course, the circle is the symbol for earth, In all cultures, it's Malkut, and we can see the fire and that beautiful gold paint being held and mediated, fire and water and earth. It's all of it is here. This is the process of the creating the Philosopher's Stone. And I'm going to play this. Many of you are very familiar with this, but it's always wonderful to have Jung in his own words. So here we go.
Ava, we can't hear it.
Can you hear it now?
Here is a Latin
No.
description.
Okay, now we can.
It's a very cryptic text that would need a lot of commentary. But I give you the mere translation. The stone speaks now, being personified, of himself and says, Orphanos sum, solus tamen ubique reperior, udo sum sed mihi contrarius. I am an orphan, alone. Yet I am found everywhere. I am one, but I am contrary to myself, a youth and an old man at the same time. I have known neither father nor mother, because I must be lifted up from the depths, like a fish, or I fall down from the sky, like the white stone. In woods and on mountains, I am walking about, but I am hidden. I lie hidden in the innermost of man. I am mortal for everyone, and yet I am not touched by the mutation of time.
So there's the serpent on the back of Jung's stone at Bollingen, and here is the front of it. And this homunculus, which is, I believe, an aspect of the Mercurius energy within this little creature, this little man, is the symbol for Mercury. And all around, which he was translating, we have the symbols for the 7 planets that are connected to these elements that are necessary to this process. We have the moon and the sun, whoops, and I'm going to pop back, Jupiter and Venus, and above it Saturn and Mars. And this was Jung's work, of his own work, squaring the circle. So here, again, from Answer to Job, Jung says the difference between the natural individuation process, which runs its course unconsciously, and the one which is consciously realized is tremendous. In the first case, consciousness nowhere intervenes. In the end remains as dark as the beginning. But in the second case, so much darkness comes to light that the personality is permeated with light. And consciousness necessarily gains in scope and insight. The encounter between conscious and unconscious has to ensure that the light which shines in the darkness is not only comprehended by the darkness, but comprehends it. So here, for those of you who have been working with Pauli's work, is that synchronicity, again, that dance between the inner and the outer of darkness. Light comes to know itself through the darkness. So the filius solis, illuminate, the son of the son of the sun and the moon, the divine child, so to speak, is the possible result as well as the symbol of this union of opposites. It is the alpha and the omega of the process, which is the beginning and the end, the Ouroboros, the mediator and the intermedius. It has 1,000 names, say the alchemists, meaning that the source from which the individuation process arises and the goal towards which it aims is nameless, ineffable. And that goal is what we were seeing in the crown in Kether at the top of the tree. This is the journey, and here we go, here we are. So the goal is to come up the tree, you know, in the first Kuniyuktio, to arrive at the realization of light from the darkness, and then to bring the light back. And that's the spark of bringing the spark of light back to earth, bringing consciousness back. And that is our task, I believe, as humans, as stewards, to understand that heaven truly is right here on earth. It's animate, it's alive. We have forgotten. And there's the story of Sophia on another path that describes that that breaking of these vessels. These are the Sephiroth, or which are the singular for Sephiroth, which is what these circles are, were broken vessels. And so we fell from grace, and we're in the process of, we have the choice whether to return. And the only way is by bringing the light through the darkness. So here's one of Jake Badley's images, which I often use, of the alchemist process. He is a contemporary painter and sculptor living in the Netherlands, and much of his work is influenced by alchemy, astrology, tarot, and Carl Jung. And here we have from the Splendor Solis of 1582, we have these processes, which for another time we can get into it. There are 22 of these. I have been very selective and chosen some. Here we see the process. Here we have the ladder in the very, very beginning, and the alchemists talking, and someone here climbing the tree. We have the crows, a lot of birds. The crows of connected to this calcination process, to the winged doves, which are then associated with this transformation. And it moves in a circle. And here we have the dissolution, the solutio process. We go from fire to water. Here's a separation. Here again, the two come together. We can see the feminine, masculine, the king and the queen. They're coming together, and finally, this image with the rubedo, the return to out of the depths. So here is the top of the tree. It's a supernal triangle. Kether, the crown, Hokmah, wisdom, Bina, understanding. Hokmah and Bina are also interchangeable. So they do represent the Sophia energy together, and they are unmanifest. And Kether is connected to, I've associated with Neptune, because Neptune is that one light. It is, in Stanislav Grof's work, the bliss state, the womb state, the garden, and the beginning. It is the garden. And so here, Neptune, and the great I, the one. Now, Hokmah is looking back at the one, so we now have a reflection. And Hokmah then is wisdom. It's connected to Uranus, and Uranus is a planet of electricity. It's connected to the masculine of force, where Bina is connected to form. So we have here the I, thou, but only in the archetypal realm, only in the possibility of being. Here we have William Blake, and I guess this is a symbol for the alchemist, but it speaks to me of that Uranian energy, the electrical force that brings it all. So here I stopped and moved back, and here we have the 7 splendor solis images that are connected, correspond to the appropriate planets. And they, of course, there are 7, and they begin with Saturn. And from this point, we're going to go into the Azoth. Now, the Azoth is, according to Dennis William Hawke, whose work this is based on right now, and Basil Valentine, 1582, I'm going to have to move, 1659, excuse me, image. And this is the entire work from here, this Philosopher's Stone, moving in a clockwise fashion back to the Philosopher's Stone. And they are 8 parts, and I'm going to go through it briefly. One of the things is the Azoth is itself. The word itself is related to A to Z, in the Arabic alphabet. And it is the Mercury, the quintessence itself. So it comes from the Ein Sof, which we saw above the tree, which is the absolute ultimate substance of Kabbalah. What comes from before the first spark of light. And this is from the secret teachings of all ages. Manly P. Hall explained this connection, saying, and I quote, "The universe is surrounded by the sphere of light, of stars. And beyond that sphere is the Shamayim, who is the divine fiery water, the first outflow of the word of God, the flaming river pouring from the presence of the eternal mind." This fiery androgyne divides, and the fire becomes solar fire, and water becomes lunar water in our universe. So the Azoth is the universal medicine of the soul, the supreme reason and absolute justice. It is connected to the mind, both mathematically and in practical truth, and its body is the quintessence, which is a combination of the gold and the light and the very first matter of the great work of which we're speaking. So to begin, it's also been called the universal solvent, the elixir of life, which is the Philosopher's Stone, and embodies all medicines. And Paracelsus, the 16th century alchemist, was said, as we said previously, to have arrived and achieved this, which is the unus mundus experience of body, soul, and spirit in alignment. So this is related to, it connects physical, mental, and the spiritual. So it is also the animating energy of life itself, and contains within itself the Mercurius. So it is the beginning and the end. So here we can see, just to move into this more deeply, we begin here with the stone, which is 1. It's related to what we were talking about, to Saturn. Saturn being the blackening, the black dross, the black matter, the prima materia. And this is where we begin. And we begin with this death, as you can see, this dissolving. We go back to the bone. Calcinatio is related to calcination, it's bone. So we go back to the bone, and from there, that's the prima materia. And from there, we move forward into this next realm, which is Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, as we were saying, is related to the dissolution, the water, the solutio. And here we are, from the fire, we are dissolving the energy. You know, it's going through this process where it's beginning to be refined. It's a breaking down of the artificial structures of the psyche in psychological terms. But it involves a complete immersion into the unconscious, which is still part of this nigredo process that we're talking about, this darkening, depression. It's related to dreams and visions, but it's a deep, we experience it psychologically as a deep depression. And the next phase is Mars. And the Mars phase is connected, then corresponds to separation. And separation is a cutting away. Mars is definitely the planet of cutting away. It's usually associated with a fire, but in this case, it has to do with air, because we're separating the subtle body from the body. And it's a process when we're still in a depressed state, but we are now aware. There's a consciousness that the body and the soul, spirit are separate. And it's a rediscovery, according to Dennis William Hawke, a rediscovery of our essence and the reclaiming of the dream and the visionary gold. It's previously been rejected, and so we must now come into relationship with it. And separation also involves a letting go of what was really important to us, that we were connected to, attachments on the physical plane. But here, this energy that has been frozen begins to be released. And there's room now for new beliefs and new energy coming in. So the next phase here is the conjunction, the conjunctio, and it is the first conjunction. And this is one of the secrets of this universal Azoth, is that we arrive at the conjunction at stage 4, and then we arrive at it again at stage 8. But this is the first conjunction we were speaking of, where we're bringing spirit down towards matter, and we arrive in this, here we have these two birds coming together, and the conjunction is our true selves. It's the first union of the yang and the yin, the masculine and the feminine within our personalities, and the beginning of, our intuition, our intuitive state, where we begin to understand something larger than ourselves. So the alchemists referred to this as the lesser stone, because from this point, we can at least have a sense of where we need to move next in terms of our own personal growth. So this is the sun that this is connected to, number 4. Now, number 5, we have the 2 doves crowned. That actually, this was the 2 doves crowned. This is the conjunctio right here. Also called the rectificatio, which is there. It's a rectification. It's a rebalancing. So the next phase is Venus, and it is connected. And I don't know if I mentioned the elements. Of course, I will go back. Saturn is lead. Jupiter is tin. Mars is iron. The sun is, of course, gold. Venus is copper, and Mercury is quicksilver, Mercury, and we end, of course, with the moon, which is silver, and return here to the Philosopher's Stone. But we're back here in Venus, and in this fermentation process, so we have had this lesser conjunctio, and now we must dissolve again, and we ferment, And in that fermentation, there's a whole new decay process that is necessary for the new to return. And we'll go more deeply into this. Of course, there's a putrefaction process, and it arises, and out of this comes what they call the coda pavonis, which is the beautiful peacock's tail, which is part of the fermentation process, and very colorful. And it intimates this desire for the union, and in this process, the personality once again breaks down and deepens. And we are now, of course, in this what we call the whitening, the Albedo phase has been. We're entering that here, because the next one, Mercury here, with this unicorn overhead, is the distillation process. So the distillation process is likened to creating brandy from wine. So it's even more refined, where we're becoming more psychically attuned, and the body is becoming more refined also in order to receive this new penetration of light that the distillation process is creating. So finally, we have this emergence, which of the human. This you see in the judgment card sometimes, which is called Aeon in the Thoth deck. And we arrive back at the stone. So you can see that the second Kuniyuktio, which is the, by the way, this is the coagulation. And here in the coagulation, we've been dissolving and coagulating, coming apart and coming together. And here we have a new understanding and brilliance of beyond all things that were imagined. So this is the second Kuniyuktio. We have arrived back in matter. This is the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone. And in this coagulation, we have reached this, the soul connected now with spirit and living in the body. And of course, I didn't mention it, but here is this in the center is the philosopher as God in a sense, and his feet down here, and we have the king and the queen, and here's another image of it, and the king and the queen, and above them again we had this salamander and this eagle. So anima on the side of the mask, on the fire, spiritus on the side of water, and so they're always dancing together. It's always a dance of the caduceus. So this beautifully written is also by Dennis William Hawke, and he nails it here. Just as the 7 first notes in the musical scale lead to an 8th note that is a repetition of the first at a higher level of vibration, so do the 7 operations of alchemy lead to a return to the realm of matter at a higher frequency of consciousness. In other words, the goal of alchemy is not to remain in the realm of spirit. Like Buddhist and Taoist doctrine, the goal is to become purified in the realm of spirit and then to return to the earth as seeds of spirit. The great work of alchemy is nothing less than the consecration of the whole universe, as the Emerald Tablet tells us. It is the coagulation of spirit in matter, the full awakening of the hidden spark of light and consciousness, of light and consciousness that is trapped in matter. So that's Mercury. That can only be accomplished by a second conjunction, a sacred marriage between soul and spirit that takes place on both the vertical axis and horizontal axis of reality. That is the cross of matter. This is the true message of the Rosicrucians, the Kabbalists, and the mystical Christians. To bring spirit or the divine will into the world, we must sacrifice ourselves at the cross of matter. And this is, of course, the marriage here, the coming together of the body and soul William Blake. And actually, this is just a close-up of what we just went through. And just to backtrack here, because I took a different journey here, Bina, again, understanding, Saturn. So she is the great mother, but she is also the blackening. She is also the Negredo, because she is the creator and destroyer of form. And here we have from the Splendor Solis, these close-up images. Here we can see this young boy fighting with the dragon. And this is that process of Negredo where we're battling the ego in order, we're struggling. We're still in the ego, the beginning of the egoic breakdown. And yet all around, Saturn is connected to work. It's connected to labor. So we can see, you know, it is the work of the world. It's connected to the number 7. And we can see the world around us is Saturnian. It is the, Saturn is also the guardian of the thresholds in astrology, because it bridges the transpersonal planets with the personal, what they call the personal planets. Now, the transpersonal planets were the ones that the ancients didn't have access to, that we know of. So here's Thoth, and this is Pluto. I've relegated this to Pluto. This is knowledge. This is the great abyss. And here we have this image, of course, by Doré from the Divine Comedy, standing at the edge of that great abyss. But here there is light. In Thoth, there actually, it is a hidden knowledge. It's the gnosis itself. It's the knowing that comes through. But here we have light. We have the beginning of, we can see both, but it is also the gateway between life and death. And again, Jung, from Symbols of Transformation, related to this, no one should deny the danger of the descent, but it can be risked. No one need risk it, but it is certain that someone will. And let those who go down the sunset way do so with open eyes, for it is a sacrifice which daunts even the gods. Every descent is followed by an ascent. The vanishing shapes are shaped anew, and the truth is valid in the end only if it suffers change and bears new witness in new images, in new tongues, like a new wine that is put into new bottles. Beautiful quote, and a warning that this process of individuation is not for the faint of heart. It is a lonely path, and there are many pitfalls. But the reward, of course, is this experience of wholeness and the distillation of finally bringing spirit into matter and the Philosopher's Stone. And here, another image of what we've been speaking of, the solve coagula, dissolve and coagulate, that is life. The fire and the water, and again, it's a circulation. Here we have this, the phoenix within the alchemical sealed container. Another Jofra Boss chart, the divine feminine here, Bina, the great mother, holding the spirit, bringing that into matter. It's a beautiful image. Now here we move into the philosophical triangle. We just went through Thoth, and so we have been through all of these as we've gone along. Now we have Jupiter, mercy, and Mars on the right, and Tiferet, which is beauty, the sun. And this is the place of soul. It's the place of psyche on the tree. And we have spoken of Mars. It's on the pillar of severity, the cutting away, as we said, the separation. And we have this image, and it's Mars. It's warlike. We can see that, there's a conflict within this. We have warlike creatures, people riding on horses. We have arrows and these three-headed rooster, and this split. Another image from the Splendor Solis of this nigredo separatio, the cutting away of the head, of the mind from the body, the cutting off of the limbs, the possibility that within this cutting away there is the beginning of new life emerging. They cut the head away. Here we have mercy, Jupiter, the sphere, the blue sphere. And here, this is an expansive, a much more expansive. Here, there is commerce. It's very, this particular image, very Jupiterian, although the two birds, again, are intermingling here. But we have this rich expansion and commerce and people creating things. So Jupiter is opportunity and this expansiveness that we're seeing here. Jumping through this for the sake of time, of course, and here is a correspondence intimation here of the albedo. We see the cooking, the dissolution process, also from the Splendor Solis, cooking slowly, and the beginning of the spirit arising out of this man's head as the alchemist is turning the heat, just getting it just right, with the city behind. And of course, this very famous image of the alchemist between the worlds, the betwixt and the between, in this world of matter, peeking into the transpersonal, the other world. And Tiferet, beauty, the sun, the conjunctio, the coming together, the gold, and it's the first conjunction, as we're saying. And so here is the sun, and here we have the three heads. You know, we have the albedo, we have the nigredo, which is the black, the albedo, which is the white, and the red-headed dragon. And so, and here, it is such a, this is the ultimate harmonious point, because all roads meet, everything meets at the heart and soul of Tiferet. It is beauty. It is, you can see that there's harmony, there's perfect harmony, and it's the sixth. It's also the seal of Solomon, where the triangle of fire meets the triangle of water within this. And this beautiful image, of course, just beauty by Da Vinci. So a reminder, again, the experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego, Jung reminds us. And again, from the Splendor Solis, where the black sun is after the conjunctio, after this beautiful coming together, what we are talking about, we move into the necessity of deeper fermentation, of going, oh, well, is this really the coming together? Is this all there is? No. There's yet a deepening, there's yet a death, there's yet another fermentation process and refining of the soul. And another image, alchemical image of this putrefaction. You can see the sun, the skeleton standing on the sun. So it's another phase of death and rebirth. But it's a death and rebirth psychologically. You know, we have come out, you know, when you have a peak experience, you're inevitably going to go through another depression because we need to find a new balance. So now we enter the lowest triangle on the Tree of Life. We're below Tiferet now, and on the right side we see, at least looking at it objectively, we see Venus, copper, the Netzach, which is imagination, the imaginal realm. We're very close now. We're in the subtle body. We're in the astral plane. We're getting closer to matter. And so the colors are now becoming combinations of the previous primal colors. And on the left, we have Hod, which is Mercury, which has to do with thought, thinking. So we have imagination and thinking, and coming together, as you can see in the lower triangle, it's very feminine, the subtle body. We come together here in Yesod, which is the foundation, and really the bottom of the tree before we return to Earth. And so going into this, just some more images. Here's the peacock's tail, the pavo cavonis, and its beauty. Again, it's Venus. It's the goddess of beauty. And here we have this people enjoying themselves. And there's music here, and there's good food and wine, and just this beauty, and the philosopher, the getting close to the crowned peacock, which is this fermentation process emitting new color, new life. From Hermann Hesse, The Journey to the East, I pulled this. I shall always remember how the peacock's tails shimmered when the moon rose among the tall trees, and on the shady bank the emerging mermaids gleamed fresh and silvery among the rocks. So, and we know Hesse did work with Carl Jung, and Damien is actually based on his work with Jung. And another Jake Badley image of the peacock and the egg. And I added this just because it's Pure Beauty by Shi, just an image of beauty. Now here's the sublimatio, which is the sublimation, and it comes after the fermentation process, and it's another alchemical image. There's a whole series of these. I only pulled it. If you can see the tree on the right, you can see that there's a refining process going on here now. The phoenix on the left, and what is the swan on the right with the king and the queen. Now Hod, splendor, which is Mercury, which has to do with thought. So we've moved from Venus, which is imagination, to thought, thinking, the logos. So we have the eros and the logos. And here, interestingly enough, in Mercury, you have the feminine. So again, there's always this dance of the caduceus. Within the masculine, you have the feminine. Within the feminine, the masculine, the yang and yin, always. And so we have the queen in the center. And again, here is a very mercurial. They're counting. There's commerce. Mercury, of course, Mercurius being the god of commerce, and as well as sacred to travelers, and beyond his trickster and magical aspects. And Yesod, which is the foundation. And the foundation is really the bottom of the tree. So this is where the distillation happens, because it is the point that is directly connected to Tiferet, which is the soul self, and above that through Doth into the supernal triangle of Kether, the crown. So it is a reflection of spirit in matter. Spirit in the astral plane, however. And the astral plane, the moon, and its relationship to our earth as we get closer. Once again, another Jake Badley image, which is of the sublimation. We have this albedo, the whitening, the feather, like we're in the opening of spirit. We haven't quite landed yet here. There are swans, there's the moon. This is a apt image. We're close, but we're not quite there. By John Waterhouse. So here we have arrived at last on Earth. This is Malkut, Earth. It arrived at the Philosopher's Stone at the second conjunctio. And as you can see, here we have, this is the circle, and within it is the square. Air, fire, earth, and water, which corresponds to the thinking, air, fire, thinking, intuition, feeling, and sensation functions. Clearly, Jung pulled from this. And the final solar, the sun, now returned and has returned and looking upon the earth, the second conjunction. And this is just where we've been. So we have arrived back here in this cube, which is also, of course, connected to salt. We have connected the fire through Mercury to earth, the salt. That's the second conjunction. And again, the marriage of the sun and the moon. Jake Badley, this image, she is holding up that seal of Solomon, which is that spirit, the fire and the water, and holding the sun and the moon. And from Jung, know that the sun is your father, the moon your mother, the wind bears you in its womb, and the earth nurses you. You are more than your body, more than your emotions, and more than your mind. You are something else. From you will come the golden flower, the alchemical essence. Of this no man may speak. Such matters must be transmitted in mystical terms, like employing fables and parables. The purpose of life is to square the circle. The 4, the 3, and the 2 must become one. From the marriage of the opposites, the royal marriage of king and the queen, is born the Philosopher's Stone, the 5th essence. And that is us, the atom, cadmon, the microcosm, the androgyne that we are. This is from the 15th, 16th century. Again, the marriage of the sun and the moon with the dove overhead and the 6-pointed star, which refers back to Sephiroth and the perfect balance point, the 6. The final, the conjunctio, the king and queen, and from the Splendor Solis again, the sun and the moon, fire, water, sun and moon, king and queen. So from Jung, the union of opposites in the stone is possible only when the adept has become one, him, herself. The unity of the stone is the equivalent of individuation, by which we are made one. We would say that the stone is a projection of the unified self. This formulation is psychologically correct. It does not, however, take sufficient account of the fact that the stone is a transcendent unity. We must therefore emphasize that though the self can become a symbolic content of consciousness, it is, as a supraordinate totality, necessarily transcendent as well. So I believe he is referring to that which we cannot touch, that is beyond that which we can comprehend, which is beyond that place of Tiferet, which moves higher up into the realm, the tree itself, into those other realms. And yet it is that union of opposites is necessary in order to become whole. And as we can see, we live in such a divided world right now, the black and the white and the dark and the light and the conflict. Perhaps that separation is necessary in order for us to come to consciousness, to come back to the one. So here is our beautiful planet, the one we live on for now, and from William Blake. And to end, the Primavera from Botticelli, where we can see the array of what it would look like, what I call the redemption, the world, life and death, it all beautifully displayed here through the three graces and the possibility through love. And to end, I thought it would be appropriate, T.S. Eliot from Four Quartets. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And all shall be well, and all manner of thing shall be well, when the tongues of flames are enfolded into the crown knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. So that's it.